So let's talk about the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, or as we call it, the RIA. So the RIA really changed a lot in the program and did a lot to benefit the EB5 investors. It did increase the amount from $500,000 to $800,000 that you have to invest. Now that had been the same amount since 1990. So it was adjusted for inflation. And if you look at the inflation throughout that time, $800,000 in today's money is less than $500,000 in 1990 money. A massive change that was made by the RIA back in 2022 was allowing concurrent filing. What that means is if you are investing from within the United States, let's say you're on a student visa or a work visa, you can file what's called your I-526E petition, which is the petition to be approved for a green card. At the same time, you file your I-485 change of status. The change of status is what changes you from your work visa or your student visa to a green card holder. Now, you were not able to do this before the RIA, but now you can file both those petitions at the same time. Your I-485 obviously will not be approved until after your I-526E is approved. However, you will obtain an EAD work authorization and an advanced parole travel permit. Most investors receive this in about 3 to 4 months after filing. So that means that if you're in the US on a work visa or a student visa, you apply for EB5, you concurrent file. Within around 3 to 4 months, you will likely have a work authorization, a travel permit, so you can work freely in the United States and travel in and out of the United States, which gives you a huge amount of the benefits of a green card while you're waiting for your green card in the process. So this makes filing from within the United States extremely valuable. Another part of the law was the implementation of set-aside visas, which essentially brought back the Indian and Chinese markets to EB5. What had happened in the EB5 program is there were so many investors from India and China that it started to create a backlog. And it was taking almost 15 years to get a green card from China and about 7 years to get a green card from India. Well, most of the rest of the world was getting green cards in 2 to 3 years. And so they made a big change that allows the Chinese and Indian investors not to have to wait in that backlog. And they also increase the adjudication capabilities so that investors are getting green cards even faster than the 2 to 3 years we were seeing in the past. We even had one who obtained a green card in 4 months recently. And so what these set-aside visas do is they allow targeted employment area, TEA investors, to skip the backlog. You can invest in 3 types of TEAs. One is infrastructure, which is 2% of all the visas in EB5. One is high unemployment, which gets 10% of all the visas in EB5 set aside. And the other is rural, which gets 20% of all the EB5 visas set aside. So every year there's 10,000 visas added to the EB5 program, and they're reserving 20% of those for rural, 10% for high unemployment, which means an urban project, and 2% for infrastructure projects, so that if you're from China or India and you're backlogged in the old program, you can skip that backlog and take one of those set aside visas. So it's a huge benefit for Indian and Chinese investors. Lastly, they also gave an additional benefit to rural. So not only does rural get 20% of the visas, but they also get priority processing. So we have been realizing approvals in an average of around 6 months in our rural projects. Since the RIA, we had 3 rural projects and 1 urban project or a high unemployment project that we have submitted petitions on. The first 2 projects we did, one was rural, one was high unemployment. The first cases were submitted around the same time. We have over 100 approvals, I-526E approvals on that rural project to date. And so those were filed fall of 2022, and we're here in June of 2024. On the urban project, we do not yet have an approval for an I-526E petition. So that shows you the benefit of investing in rural projects, as you will get the green card approval a lot faster than if you invest in a high unemployment project. There's also already likely a pretty large backlog for Chinese and Indian investors in the high unemployment set-aside category.